Mic check. Mic check. Always got to make sure the mic's on. It's a thing now. It's become a shtick. A shtick. Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. Happy weekend for those of you that are actually on your weekend. I'm on my weekend. And what are we going to do today? So we have a basketball game that we're going to at about 2. So I'm going to try to get a little work in on this project that we started yesterday. So what we're building here is basically, we're building myself a tool that can generate alt text for images, so that when you post something on LinkedIn or you post something on Twitter, or you post something on Blue Sky, or any of these platforms, or really, I mean, if you put an image anywhere on the web, you can provide some sort of alternative text to make that image accessible for the people who need that type of thing. And right now, I do this primarily all manually with either Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, and I go to the Blue Sky app, I write my post, I upload my image, then I go back to another app, I add my image, I type out a prompt, and then I try to get the LLM to generate some alt text that I want. And so while the thing I'm building is still going to require me to do some of that work, some of that context switching, hopefully it'll make it quicker to get good alt text consistently. So I'll have a standardized prompt, a standardized way of putting that image and putting that prompt to the LLM. And then I'm also going to build a couple different clients for the tool so that I can host the generator as an API, and then I can build like a console app so that I can generate alt text by just giving it a path to a file or even a URL, and then also a web UI so that if you want to also upload some files and maybe you want to be able to generate alt text for those files, and maybe you want to be able to regenerate it really conveniently. So just a couple different clients for that. So that's what we're working on. And yesterday we basically got as far as setting up the project. That was basically as far as we got, was setting up the project. So we're gonna try to be a little bit more productive today and at least maybe even implement generating the alt text. So let's go ahead and make this a little bigger. And that's the thing. I talked about this yesterday, but we did spend like an hour or an hour and a half setting up the project yesterday. Probably an hour. But we kind of laid some really good foundation to help make working on the project easier and make us more productive. So let's go ahead and get into it. And this is what we're pretty much working on right now. We're pretty much focused on this bit. So we just need an API, we need an endpoint that we can hit, we need to be able to give it some different types of images and do a little bit of validation against the types of images we want to support. We need to accept an API key. We need to do some validation against which providers we support. And then once we get that implemented, then we actually need to implement these different providers. And I think I'm starting with Gemini. I'm going to start with Gemini just because I have a bunch of free credits with Gemini, or with Google Cloud. So that's where I'm going to start. I have a Vim here. cd go to Vim data. Stuff. Atom. Clean slate. All right, so let's jump over to our files. Let's take a look at our tests. So we wrote a test yesterday. We can actually delete this. We wrote a test yesterday that was for the existing I'm going to call this generate endpoint test. So these are some integration tests. I set this all up yesterday. So the idea here is we can actually load up a version of our API into memory and make requests against it. So yesterday I implemented this just weather forecast test because that's the boilerplate endpoint that comes with a new .NET API. But now we actually want to implement a generate endpoint. So we should be able to do something like await client, get async, but it shouldn't be get, right? It should be post. We should say post adds JSON. Yeah, we can post it as JSON. And we should be able to say generate let me just give it like a new, let's just give it like anonymous object for now. And then we should be able to say something like response dot should dot be so if you have something like, so if you're working on a test project like this and you're using a library like Fluent Assertions, which I am, and you don't want to have to add a using for that everywhere. It's kind of basically the same idea with like XUnit. So I'm using the XUnit test runner, but everywhere I use fact, I don't want to have to also add a using for XUnit, or really anything from the XUnit library while I'm in this test project. You can do the same thing with Fluent Assertions. So instead of adding a using in all the places where I want to use Fluent Assertions, what I could do is I could go to my global usings file and I could add it here. However, we can also go one place further and we can actually go to our test project and we can actually add it here. So we can actually add a using here that's called using include, and then we can say Fluent Assertions. We can write that out. And now if we go back to our tests, we should be able to give it an edit, and now it should pass. Right? So that's pretty cool. Saves you a lot of boilerplate. That. Okay, so what do we want to assert here? So if we post, let's do this. Get weather async. Let's say generate endpoint when called without required parameters. It should return a problem detail with status code 400. Remove the underscores from member name alt. Yeah, I need to turn that off. So let's go to my editor config file. And we'll just come down, we'll just look for diagnostic. I guess I don't have anything in here for diagnostic. Let's add here diagnostics, and we are going to add a new one, but it's not going to be CA that, it's going to be 1707. Was that the error? $17.07. Yeah. So you put that out. We'll go back to our Is it still complaining? Let's try to right quit all. Back up. Give it a second for the LSP to attach. There you go. It's no longer complaining about that. So it was complaining that I had underscores here, but this is kind of the convention how I like to write my test class methods. So I disabled that so that it would stop complaining. Okay, so what I should be able to do here is I should be able to say dot have status code, HTTP status code dot add request, and I'm missing a using for that. And I'm going to actually put these global using. Okay. Now if I run this should fail because I don't have this generate endpoint map. Can I omit this? I can't omit that. Okay. So I write that out, and now I should be able to run this test by doing leader DTR. No, leader TR, sorry, not D, leader TR. This should fail. Okay. And if we look at why it failed, so leader DO, leader TO, the expected HTTP status code to be HTTP bad request, but found 404, which is what we expect because we haven't actually done anything with that endpoint. So let's go to program.cs. Are you trying to get into my shop?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, let's go ahead and delete all this because we don't need it anymore. And let's remove this because we don't need that anymore either. remove these comments because I know what this is doing. Okay, so let's map our first endpoint. It's actually probably going to be our only endpoint. This is going to be a really simple API when it comes down to it. Let's see, generate. And no, I don't want to do that. I think for now what I want to do is I just want to have a lambda that returns all stuff. Okay. Static, that's fine. We'll let that out. Let's actually do a v split. That way we can see our test file. So that means this should still pass, but it should be a 200 okay now. So, or should still fail, but it should be a 200 okay now. Yep. Okay, see, so we're hitting our endpoint now. Oops, sorry. If you guys can see that, I'm gonna do this. So we're hitting the endpoint, so that's good. So now what we want to do is let's actually define what we want to send. So let's just come down here, make a new record, and we'll call this generate request. And we are going to say that our generate request is going to have a string. Yeah, it's going to have a string, which is going to be the LLM provider. And then it's going to have a not another. Is it going to be another string? Yeah, string. This will be provider key. And this will be this is actually going to be our file, and I think if I remember right, this should be iForm file. Yeah, because we're going to actually want to post this as multi-part. Because, yeah, but this is going to be a multi-part because we want to send some form information, but we also want to be able to send files. So this is going to be iForm file. And then, are you trying to get into my shop? No. It feels like it because you came over here and started hopping around and stuff. Okay, sounds good. Oh, and then okay, so I want this, so then how do you bind this, right? So the way you do this is you come up here to your Lambda and you say from body, and then you're gonna give it the type, generate request, and that's gonna be a request. And that needs a using. How do I jump to the top? I'm still learning how to navigate Neovim. How to jump off of file by typing only characters. Go. GG. So Shift G goes to the bottom. Yep. Okay. GG goes to the top. Fix formatting? What? I don't understand. Alright, and then we'll come back in here. Good after resolve, okay now. Alright, so let's put this on a new line. You can see everything a little bit. This is definitely going to have to become an actual. Oh god. I hit the wrong button. So, no, we're going to want, it's complaining that it wants us to make it a lambda, but we don't want to. So the first thing we do is we need to validate our request, obviously, right? So I'm going to use something called the iValidatable object. If you're not familiar with that, so iValidatable object. And this needs to be brought in with the using. Then we can implement it. So what we can do here is then we can say if LLM provider is null or white space, if provider key is null or white space, if file is null. So basically what we can do is we can go through here, we can validate each of these pieces of our request, and because it implements this IEnumerable interface, we can yield them up one at a time. And then let's use a collection initializer here. So if you're not familiar with this, C# added this really cool feature recently where you can do collection initialization. So if you're familiar with like the JavaScript world, when you initialize, the most common collection or list type in JavaScript, you declare it like this, right? So you say var array equals this. However, in .NET for forever, you usually would new up it the specific type of collection you wanted. You'd say list string, or you'd say new array, a byte of a specific length. But now what C# introduced is this ability to do a collection initializer, where you basically, if you're declaring a variable, you can declare the type of that collection. And then all you have to do is say open square brackets, close square brackets, and you can let the .NET team and the compiler worry about initializing that collection in the most efficient, most optimal way. And it makes for a really nice syntax, because then when you're doing function calls or anything that maybe accepts a list as a parameter, all you have to do is just say, call the method, let's say method with list as params, and then all you have to do is just give it that, which makes it super convenient, really nice and ergonomic. So let's use that in our case here. So let's go down below, and you can already see it's already suggesting this to me. So it says use collection expression. So now I can just type that, which is a lot nicer than having to use the new keyword. Just much more convenient. So now that we have that iValidatable interface implemented, now up here in our method, we can just say var is valid request. We can say, instead of calling, that's one way to do it, but what we're going to do is we're not going to use the iValidator. We're going to say what we're actually going to do is we're going to say var validation result, and then we're going to say if, actually not validation result, let's say errors. That's what this is. This is okay. This is so let's actually call this validation results. And then we'll say if I think instead of validation.any, we probably should do count, or maybe any's the best. I think any's the best on an IEnumerable, but if you're working with a list, I think they prefer that you use count. So we can say return results, bad request, validation results. Here. Okay. All right, so now I would expect our test to actually pass because we're not sending anything. Let's go back to our tests. And we actually don't want to post as JSON. We actually want to post as, we actually want to say var content equals new multi-part form data content. And then here, instead of post as JSON, we want to post async. We want to post, it's just empty for the moment. Oh, we should make sure we write out our changes over here. I don't know if I actually did that. Okay, so I think this should pass now. So let's go back to our file, run our tests, and this should pass. Okay, famous last word. Still was okay. So let's debug. Yeah, let's debug. Oh, I think this actually shouldn't be from body. This should be from form. Let's go ahead and set a breakpoint. Let's see, DT. That's a breakpoint there. We come over here and say space TD. So now we're going to debug our. Oh, what happened there? Internal server error. That's not good. Expected but found internal server error. So this is where we should add some middleware. You're going to say app.use middleware. Actually, we need to, first of all, we need to add a couple services here. We need to add builder.services.add problem details. And then we need to actually use that. And then we say, so down here we say app.use, it's not use problem details, it's use status code pages. So what that basically does is it makes your API respond in a very specific way that has to do with problem details. If you've built APIs, you know that returning kind of consistently shaped errors can be challenging, and problem details solves that for your API. So, for example, if you add the add problem details method on your services collection, and then you call app.use status code pages on your actual app, on your actual web application, then when you actually run your API. So let's actually run our API real quick. Let's see. Run dash project source alt text API. So if we actually navigate now to our root, now we'll see. Oops. Now we will actually see. Hey guys, if you're gonna be out here, don't come out here and start being real loud and roughhousing. Okay. Now you'll see it's returning a problems detail response, and that's how all my problem responses will be returned, is in this shape. So that's nice and convenient. Hey guys, did you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Because y'all were fine until I started working, and then you both came out here. So if you're gonna be out here, that's fine, but don't be being loud and disruptive.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
If you want, if it's about being involved with what I'm doing, you can get involved if you want. I'll include you. No? Okay. Quit this. Quit it. Let's close that. Back to program.cs. Let's delete this. Let's delete that. And let's open a new tab in PowerShell. That's too small. cd in project. Oh goodness, no. That's not what I wanted to do. Well, why is it locked? Oh. Oh. There we go. Oh, now I have an error again. All right. Cool. Well, I also need to properties, launch settings. So if you ever worked with minimal API before, you'll know that it comes with this call to use HTTPS redirection, which is great. But you might find yourself the first time you start this up or start your API up, you might find that you're only getting the application listening on HTTP and not HTTPS. And a lot of the times, the reason for this is purely because in your launch properties file, the very first profile is the profile that is going to be used. In this case, it's the HTTP profile. And so all you have to do is just go ahead and move. You could most definitely specify which profile you want to use when you launch. But what I usually do is I just move the HTTPS profile to be the first one. So let's go ahead and do that. Move that here. Go down below. Write that out. Now, if we go back to the other tab and we restart our API, we should find now that it's listening on both HTTPS as well as HTTP. So that's really nice, easy way to fix it if you ever find yourself in that situation. Go back to Wind.cs. All right, so what do we want to do? So if you've ever worked with APIs before, you know that returning a consistently shaped response, particularly a consistently shaped error response, is really nice. And .NET provides a really great way to do this. So what I can do is I can go up here to my builder and I can say builder.services.add problem details. And now what this does is it adds a service that is going to help generate problem details, which problem details, if you haven't heard about them, they're just a standardized way of describing error messages in an API. And so after you've added that up above, you can come down here to your actual app and you can say app.use status code pages. And if we write that out, we go back to our other tab and we start up our API, we should find now that if we navigate to our endpoint, we get a pretty looking status code problem detail. And so all of our error responses will be returned in this format, which is really nice. Consistency in error responses is one thing that I think is commonly overlooked. And doing it yourself probably is more effort than it's worth when you can just use something like this that comes out of the box and gives you everything you need. So the other thing I need to add here is I like to add kind of a catch-all middleware. So typically, I don't throw a lot of exceptions in APIs, or I try not to throw exceptions at the kind of at that controller action level. I tend to try to handle things in kind of a results pattern where a request either succeeds or it fails, and I address that. Now, of course, there's always going to be exceptions that bubble up, and so I want to make sure that my API still gives a response when those unhandled exceptions occur. And so I like to use kind of a global middleware to do this. And .NET provides this out of the box. So if we go down here, we can say, let's go at the very top of the pipeline, and let's say app.use middleware. And we are gonna have, I think, this comes with a couple different ways that we can use it. So we can provide it a type. So you can use a strongly type, but I think I'm gonna use just a simple lambda. Let's see, use middleware.net. Yeah, you can do something like this. So you can declare your middleware like a type. I want to use middleware.net. Are these the same? This one looks like, yeah. Okay, fair enough. So we'll say, I think we just want to do something like this. It's been a minute since I did this. Let's see. Use middleware exception. I don't want the developer. Basically what I need to do is I need to write some code that looks very similar to this. We'll say cannot convert lambda to type because it is not a delegate type. Delete all this. And then what we want to actually do here is we want to have basically we want to wrap everything in a try catch. And in here we want to say await next. And then it wants us to make this static, I think. Fine. And then what we want to do in here is, we want to write context.response, and then problem, context dot, then we want to write that. And you could also put a log, you could also log this too, right? Like that. Write that out. But what's nice now is I should be able to, with this in place, I should be able to set a breakpoint here. T, and then if I go over here, I want to close this. Come over here. Now what I should be able to do is still debug this, but whenever that internal server error happens, it should be an exception. It should get caught here. What I'm hoping happens. Yeah, so there it got caught. So what is the exception? Contains anti-forgery metadata. Oh, okay. I need to disable that. Well, that's easy enough. So .NET, if you're building an API, a minimal API like this in .NET, if you use anything that's binding from a form, by default, it's going to implement anti-request forgery, which is basically this idea of protecting against cross-site request forgery attacks. So by enforcing that, it means that basically if someone posts a form to your API, they need to include a specific token that the API can basically identify that this request is from who we know it's from who we expect it to be from, and not from somebody who's trying to pretend to be you. I'm not really worried about that, so I'm going to go ahead and just disable it. But something to be aware of when you're building APIs in .NET. So now let's go back to our test file. Space td, rerun it. And did it throw? I guess it threw again. Failed to read parameter, generate request from request body as form. Okay. Let's continue. Let's remove this breakpoint. No, I think I don't actually need to do this. I think that the problem detail service that I added will do this for me. But I need to figure out why it's not binding. Failed to parse requests from form. Failed to parse requests from. Let's see, space DT, space TR. It's tough, man, learning all these Vim motions. Okay, there we go. That worked. So I think I actually generated a false positive for myself because with that middleware in there, it was basically intercepting what the problem detail service was doing, and and rewriting the status code to 500 instead of leaving it as 400. So we should be able to say response dot should dot have, actually response dot dot as dot problem as validation details, yeah, like that. This rerun this. Excuse me. Okay, now that failed, so it must not be returning for the reason I expect. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. I think that's when we're trying to cast here. Let's set a breakpoint. Let's debug this. Sorry, one sec. I gotta yell at my kids real quick. Kids, man. Kids. What are you gonna do? Okay, so we're getting the right response back, but my response content isn't what I would expect it to be. One sec, I gotta yell at my dog now. I swear, the house is calm and peaceful until I start to do something, and then all hell breaks loose. Okay, I don't even know what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to get this endpoint to work. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out why my response content isn't what I expect it to be. But let's get the response content then and take a look at it. Var response content. Excuse me. Let's take a look at this. How do I see the rest of this? I know how I would do this in Visual Studio Code, but I don't know how to do it in... I don't know how to do it in this. Let's look it up. In App UI. Let's see. Edit the value of a variable, expand. In app UI, show variable value. What's this do? Oh no, that's that's not what I'm looking for. I just need to know, like, in there, how do I... Invent app UI, show long variable value. Oh, so, okay. So I think what it's telling me is base TR. Oh. No, that's not working. The diagnostics under the cursor. WD. Yeah, I want to be able to see this whole string. I don't know how to do that. Like, I almost want this to hover in a window or something. Well, that's not this. Invim dap UI show variable value in float. Edit it? Okay, so maybe I can edit it. Space PD. Yeah, I don't like that I can't see that whole string, huh? Invim dap UI variable cut off. So it looks like there's a way to customize this UI a little bit. Invim dap UI. I'm sorry, this is turning into a Neovim thing. I don't even know if the floating window that would help much because yeah. So this is kind of a problem for me because I prefer to I don't want to print stuff out to the console. Um, yeah. Yeah, so this is, I think this cast is causing the issue. The bad request is working. Bar response dot as should be a problem detail though, regardless of what anybody says. Good. Something happened. Okay, let's see. API find. Is that what's causing the? This needs to be as parameters, and then this actually needs to be there's something going on with my form binding. Let's see. Control P program. I don't think I'm even making it into here. Space toggle breakpoint. Not possible to change sign, DAP, breakpoint, traceback. Why is it complaining about that? Okay, let's. When all else fails, let's. Thanks for that comment, Init Fun One. Yeah, I do the same, but I thought this would be a fun to work on, and I make it a little easier. Yeah, I totally agree. You can definitely use ChatGPT for doing this, or Claude, or Gemini, and that's what I do today. Um, and I do like to use my brain, but the thing is, it gets kind of onerous having to prompt the LLM and write that out every time. So this way, my prompt's already written. I just give it a file. It gives me back the alt text, um, which I get it. It may not seem helpful. It doesn't scratch an itch for you, but it's definitely gonna scratch an itch for me. So. Plus, it gives me a good reason to try to figure out how to navigate Neovim because I need lots of practice. I wonder why it doesn't. Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm such an idiot. That's why. That's why I'm an idiot. I'm trying to cast the completely wrong thing. Space TD. It's still throwing. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to. Open Visual Studio Code because I cannot. Because I cannot figure out how I'm supposed to see what's going on. And I don't really want to spend a bunch of time looking at Neovim. I want to work on this. Let's see. Control. Let's see. Generate endpoint tests. Make this a little bigger. Now I'm trying to do Vim stuff in VS Code. Now I need to get the content. Our content. Failed to read parameter string from request body as form. Form this form section has invalid content disposition value. Form has invalid content disposition value. Delete this real quick. As parameters, generate request. This is the request. Bind it from a form. Bind it from a form. Well, I know that's going to pass. Yeah. Okay. So it's something with. So what if I did do. If I did add this, what would happen then? Okay, now I get that. So is it just because it's an empty multi-part content that it was throwing those errors? Can I add headers? Let's async. Request you up. content type. Was invalid content just .NET HTTP client send empty multi. Okay, I guess I just didn't understand how that worked then. My code was all right. I didn't understand how to actually that posting an empty form was going to break the binding. I need to spend some more time on the Invim DApp UI though, because that's a problem for me to be able to debug things. iForm file. Now we go back to this. What? No, don't want to do that. Then I want to add what? No test found. And it passed. Okay, cool. All right. After all of that, we actually have something working. Uh, as you can see, I'm not the most productive programmer on the planet. TV just on all of a sudden. Okay. Let's see, we're going for about an hour and a half now. An hour and a half, we have one test and an endpoint that kind of does something. Um, okay, let's fact public async task generate endpoint when called with required parameters. It should return okay with alt text. This isn't going to work because the file, I think the file is still going to give us a. They keep saying no test found. This still doesn't work. Why doesn't this work? Why doesn't this work though? I don't understand. I know I've done this before in other projects. Like I know 100% I've done this before. I want to print that. Pretty sure I just did that here in this project. Maybe. On it. Oh, maybe I need to read it, deserialize it. Okay. I guess that makes sense. The way I'm trying to do it doesn't really make sense, does it? I actually need to probably um, not read as JSON validation problem details. TR. I think I need to write that out first. Definitely be a problem detail. Forgive me if my workflow feels very cumbersome at the moment. I'm still trying to kind of figure out how to work. Uh, you know what? I don't think. Um, okay. I'm get- I'm getting frustrated trying to be productive in Neovim right now. So I'm going to. We're going to make a change. We're calling an audible here. We're calling an audible. Well, here's why. Because I'm this. That's not returning a problem detail. I'm an idiot. I don't need this. Right. Oh my goodness, that was just painful, wasn't it? I know I've done this in other places, but I can't remember what the code looked like. Validation results to validation. I think what I actually want to do here is say validation results dot select dictionary. This has x dot member names. I don't want to rewrite all this logic because I have written this before somewhere. I just need to go find it. Pretty sure it's in here somewhere. Yeah, so results dot to error. Two errors. There we go. There we go. There we go. Now we're cooking. I want this to actually be null. Value cannot be null. Maybe I don't want to check for null. Maybe I want to check for... I guess, hold on, maybe I do. What if I make this empty? Required parameter iForm file was not provided from form file. Maybe what I actually want to check is if file dot length is 0. There we go. Now we have 3. Okay, so they send us an empty file. They don't send us this. Okay, that's the behavior we were looking for. File content. This should work now too. Okay, cool. All right. So let's go back to Neovim. And I need to actually wrap up here and get ready for a basketball game. So let's go back over here, program.cs. Okay, so what we've done so far, what we spent way too much time doing today is we basically stubbed out our endpoint to actually get a request as multi-part form data. That's going to have a provider, a specified provider, that provider's API key, and then the file that we want to generate alt text for. We're going to validate it to make sure it has all that information. If it doesn't have that information, we're going to tell the person what information they haven't given us. and then otherwise we're going to return okay. So there's still a couple things we need to do here. We need to make sure here to do, make sure the is a valid provider. Yep, we need to do that. Then we need to do, we actually need to generate the alt text. And that's what we'll do the next time we work on this. Or at least we'll start to work on this, because this is going to be a little involved. But that's what we're going to do. So something I learned today. Okay, so I guess something I already knew but forgot about. So here's what we're gonna do. Okay, let's. If you're working with a minimal API and you have a request that's coming into your API that's a complex object, you can use this iValidatable object interface to do some validation logic on your request object. In this case, I'm checking to see if some parameters are null or just empty, and then I'm checking to see if the file actually has some content that's being sent to me. The nice thing is, though, is that then if any of these validation results actually, when you call validate on your request object, if there are any results, you can then get those results and hand them back to the client as a validation problem detail. You do need a little bit of help, though, with this extension method called toErrs. It's very simple. All it's going to do is it's going to take your enumerable results and it's going to map it to that shape of a validation problem details, where the first or the key for your dictionary is going to be the parameter of that you were validating against, and then the value for that key is going to be any error messages that are associated with it. Okay, cool. So that's all we have time for today. I'm sorry it took me so long to figure out my whole validation logic problem, but we got it figured out. And now we have some tests. And yeah, so next time we'll come back, we'll work on this some more, and we'll actually get to some of the fun bits and actually get some alt text generated. Hope you guys are having a good Saturday, and I'll see you next time. See you tomorrow, maybe.